Today, on episode number 7 of Seattle Sports Scene, we will look deeper into the Sounders signing of Jesus Ferreira. We will also dive into how the Kraken have been struggling and what they can do to rebound and potentially save their season. Finally, we will discuss what we saw from the Seahawks in their Week 18 matchup against the Rams, and if we consider this season a success or a failure. Let's get into it.
A drive deep to right field, down the line. The Mariners win this game 2-1.
Drops back. He's going to throw down the middle. He's got a man. The ball is caught.
Game over,
It is
baby.
a touchdown. The game is over.
With a shot blocked. Eberle in front for Schwartz. They score! Hey, hey! What do you say? The ground early. Now the cross out to Nor. What a save by Fry!
What's going on, Seattle sports fans? We are back for another episode of the Seattle Sports Scene. It is good to be back. It's been about a week and a half since we've recorded our last episode. With me here, as always, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Seattle Sports Season. Got a lot to talk about this episode, about the Kraken and Seahawks in particular. The Seahawks coming to the end of their season, unfortunately not making the playoffs. The Kraken, struggling a lot. I've got a lot of thoughts on that later. As well as Seattle Sports Season here too. But first, to start it all off, we got some pretty big Sounders news here. And what are your thoughts on this Sounders news that we got?
Yeah, so this last week, the Sounders went out and got Jesus Ferreira from FC Dallas. Many of you, if that name sounds familiar, he's been one of the premier forwards in the MLS here for a few seasons. In addition to that, he's also had stints with the United States men's national team, playing as their striker. He is exactly what the Sounders were looking for. I haven't seen any details on the contract yet. It was reported when we traded for him that they had already agreed to a contract extension with him. So because his contract does expire at the end of this season. But he is just 24 years old, so he's still young, but he has plenty of experience. He started playing for FC Dallas. I'm pretty sure. Let me pull it up. Yeah, he started playing for them in 2019. In 2019, he played 38 matches for them, scored 8 goals. But it really wasn't until 2022 where he really got into his form. In 2022, he played 35 games for FC Dallas, scored 18 goals, had 6 assists. The next year, played 29, scored 13. Last year, a little bit of a down year for him as he struggled with injuries throughout the season, but still played 22 games, scored 5 goals, 3 assists. He's really someone that just a lot of for people that watch the Sounders frequently and are tuned in for pretty much all of their games, a consistent struggle for the Sounders throughout the last few seasons has been getting quality chances that just aren't finished. We'll get perfect crosses into the box. Our wingers serve up these balls. We'll get breakaway goals, and Jordan Morris will miss it, or he'll hit it right at the goalie, or the tap-ins are missed. And Jesus Ferreira, he's a goal scorer. That's what he is. I went through and watched his 50 MLS goals that he scored in his career, and there is a few bangers in there. Like, he has the potential to create for himself, but a lot of these are just like goals where he is finishing opportunities that he should be finishing. And for the Sounders, that's kind of just what we needed, because we have some excellent winger play. Now you have Jordan Morris. I'm anticipating them moving Jordan Morris down to the wing now, and Pedro de la Vega being fully healthy to start this season. He'll play on the other wing, and you have Rusnak back in the middle. And so those 3 guys can create. You just need someone that's in front of the goal, that's a striker by nature, who's just pesky, who's going to get into the box and put in goals. And that's what Jesus Ferreira is going to provide for this team, which is why I'm so excited. For those of you that want to get like a taste of him, he is premiering for the U.S. men's national team in their January set of games. He's one of the players that got selected for their roster. It just came out earlier today. So you can tune into. I think they have 3 matches that they're playing in this January set for national teams. You can tune in, watch him there, just get a little bit of taste for what he's going to bring to the table. He's been pretty good for the men's national team. He played in the World Cup qualifiers in 21, 22. He played in 6 matches, scored 1 goal. He was selected for the World Cup team in 2022. However, he didn't score and he only made an appearance in 1 match. And then in the CONCACAF Gold Cup in 2023 is really where he showed out. He played 5 matches, scored 7 times in that tournament. So he's a talented guy. He's been talented at a club level. He's shown flashes of being very talented with the national team, and so it's a fantastic trade for the Sounders. They did have to give up Leo Chu in addition to a international roster spot and $2 million, which for MLS is a significant chunk of money, in order to make this deal happen. But Leo Chu was never really blossoming into the player that we kind of hoped he would be. Really, they brought Pedro de la Vega in with the increase in talent from Rothrock. He kind of just fell out of the rotation. We also have Georgie now, who's also going to be playing on the wing, who's kind of just like what Leo Chu was supposed to be. Um, so I anticipate the FC Dallas holds on to Leo Chu, but it's also an option that they could go look to sell him and make more money off of this. But either way, it's a pretty equal deal. I wouldn't say that we fleeced them at all because we gave them a lot of money, and still a talented young player in Leo Chu. But in terms of the Sounders, you gave up someone who wasn't playing for an instant impact player, and that's exactly what they needed to do. So that's about it. I wish the Mariners would take some notes because it's basically exactly what the Mariners need to do. Just turn your strength, which was wingers, having an excess amount of wingers, and turn that to address a weakness. So the Mariners could just use some of that pitching to go get a bat. That'd be ideal. But great move by the Sounders front office. And we still do have a designated player slot available for this upcoming season, and so this team is not complete yet. There's still going to be one more impact move made before we see the Sounders in action in mid-February. So keep an eye out on that. And yeah, that's all. That's all that I got on this deal.
I don't have that much to add. I'm very unfamiliar with the player and very unfamiliar with the sport. But it sounds very exciting. I looked up who he is and his stats and was super excited to hear them get such a player like this. And it's kind of funny you bring up the point of their issues with being able to finish shots and finish plays, because it sounds a lot like a team that I know and love, that we know and love, being the Seattle Kraken, who we're going to talk about next, I believe. The Kraken just finished their game moments ago against the New Jersey Devils. It's actually technically sort of still going because there's a scrum happening. Basically, benches cleared and there's a lot of pushing and shoving. Maybe some punches thrown too. Unfortunately, they fall 3-2 to the New Jersey Devils. They played hard, played up to their opponent basically all night long. They got robbed of a couple of good opportunities by Markstrom. More on that later. And really just had a couple of unlucky bounces offensively. And just a really frustrating game. This team feels a lot better than they are in the standings, and yet can't seem to just not even consistently win games, but just stop being streaky.
Yep.
This team can't figure out if they want to lose a lot or if they want to win a lot. So I don't know. It's very confusing because you have times where like went on like a 4-game win streak, and then we lost 6 in a row, and then we won 2 in a row, and now we've lost 3 in a row, and it's such a bipolar team right now that makes for really hard moves for really management and fans for the most part, and players, because obviously it's going to affect the players. For coaching and I guess kind of the players, this is just kind of like, how do we get out of this rut? How do we get out of being such a streaky team? For management, though, this is kind of hard to figure out. Do I have the pieces? Am I providing the team with the pieces that I need to provide them with to be successful? Do I need to do anything more? Is this on my coach? Is this on my players? And for the fans, it's just emotionally exhausting and draining. Because you see games like this tonight where you're playing the Devils. You played really well, if not better than them for most of the game, and yet you still lost by 1 goal. And there's a couple of things to account for that. One being pretty bad defense. Unfortunately, the defense is just not it this year, and it's kind of less on the defensive players themselves and more on the offense not playing good defense. And it's just really, really frustrating because you have so many players on this team that have played well in the past defensively and offensively, or just been a good piece player. And unfortunately, this team is very different from the 2022 team that was full of basically 4 second and third lines, which is a pretty good strategy. It can work. You filling a team full of lines that are supposed to do both the harassing and the the scoring. But this team, unfortunately, has a great fourth line that's doing its job in getting pucks in deep, in playing good defense, in roughing up the other team. Hats off to Ben Myers, Ty Cartier, Brandon Tanev, Yanni Gord. They're doing a great job of doing what they're supposed to be doing on that fourth line. But the rest of the team, it feels like they cannot figure out who they like playing with and where they can just find a groove. Burakovsky hasn't gotten anything done, really. Jaden Schwartz getting pretty heated, which is good. And I feel like he hasn't fully, even being a much older player, I feel like he hasn't unlocked the full potential that he could have on this team. Because he's got really good hands and a really good hockey playing mind. And it just frustrates me to see players like him not be able to click. There's more and more, but I'm not going to go down the whole list and list every single one of them. Before I continue on, what are your thoughts?
It's just such an interesting thing because you take a look at who the Kraken have on their roster, and it's just like something just doesn't seem right. And I looked at the standings today, and the Anaheim Ducks have passed the Kraken now, and we are sitting 7th in the division. I mean, in the Pacific is it divisions? Divisions, right?
It's the division. It's the division.
Yeah, sitting 7th now out of 8 in the division.
And the Sharks aren't far behind.
With the Sharks behind you, and you could get passed by the Sharks. You have no business being anywhere near the Sharks and the Ducks at this point in the season. Like, I don't know what's going on because when I watch the games, it like they look they look like they want to play. And that's something that was a problem earlier in the season and kind of the terms last season. But you see the fight after the little scrum after this game, those guys want to win so bad.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like they're showing no fight. It's not like what we saw last year where they lose to the Coyotes and you see guys smiling and laughing as they come off the rink. No, these guys, they want to figure it out just as much as the fans want to figure it out. And there's still fight. I think that the coaching staff still has control of the locker room. I think that it just like you're so close. It just feels like one or two things need to click, and this team could just because the Devils are a great team, and it's like normally you play the Devils, you would like to get a point at home, but like if you lose to a good Devils team 3-2 on a Monday night, like that's not the end of the world. After playing really hard, it's the games that come before these games, like they drop games to the Sharks, they drop games to the Ducks. Like, it's not the lack of effort against good teams, it's the lack of showing up against the bad teams and the lack of like pounding on the bad teams. They drop their skill level so much, or they bring it up so much compared to who they're playing against. And even we saw that a few days ago when they were playing the Oilers. The Oilers blitzed them out of the gate. They got too early. And then the rest of the game, the Kraken competed in that game. I mean, it took a fantastic effort from Philip Grubauer to kind of make it a game, but they got within one. They fought back. And that's a very talented Oilers team. So I don't know what's going on, why they can't get ready for bad games, I guess. Or like why they can't seem to play at home, because every time they go on the road, it seems like they seem to figure something out and they'll have a good road trip and then they come back, they'll win the first game at home, and then all of a sudden the rest of the homestand just sucks. So I don't know. I went to the game against the Utah Hockey Club. I thought they looked amazing. That was one of the best games that they'd played this season. They were aggressive. They were starting fights, and when they started fights, they brought Utah players to the penalty box with them. They were gaining power plays. Their power plays looked dangerous. Like, that looked like a great team, and Utah's not a bad team. They're a pretty middle of the pack hockey team, and the Kraken beat up on them. I just don't understand why they can't do that more often.
Yeah, and the team feels like you said, they want to win. This team isn't rolling over and giving up. This team isn't like, well, we're losing and we don't care, so we're gonna, laugh as we exit the ice, etc., etc., etc. This team's trying to find other ways to win. And one thing that I'm noticing over the past few games, and this really started happening during that 5-4 overtime win comeback against the Canucks last week, and John, Edzo, and JT pointed this out, is the Kraken are, and I'm gonna steal from Shorzy here. If any of you have seen Shorzy, you'll know what I'm talking about. They talk about if you can't run them up, fill them in, and that basically means if you can't score on them, start playing physical and start laying down some hits, and you'll teach players to not go where you don't want them to go, and you'll be able to create more opportunities, basically. And that's kind of what the Kraken are doing. More hits have been laid out in the last
Yep.
3 games than I've seen in almost the last 3 seasons. This team has never played physical, but I can see if I can pull up the official stats for the hits, but this team played extremely physically, or has been playing extremely physically recently. And it's been great. I've been loving seeing it, and it's really created lots of opportunities. Players like Ty Cartier are thriving in this environment because he is a physical, hands-on, big player that is going to be able to rough up some players, and it really just heats up the team, charges up the team. The fans love it. I'm sure the coaching staff loves it. I wish players like Jamie Alexiak, who's 6'8" and huge, would actually start fighting, or not necessarily fighting, but laying down hits and being physical. Unfortunately, he's a very big guy who's a very gentle soul, so he literally doesn't fight at all. But the team's trying to win, and Alison Lukan talked about this in the intermission for the Devils game tonight, and she was talking about how Jared McCann and Andrei Burakovsky are not scoring goals right now, so they're trying to find other ways to contribute. And her
Yep.
case was laying out screens in front, and that's how we got our first goal. Was Adam Larson shooting from the point, or from the blue line, and it goes through the wickets of a player, and then through the screen from Burakovsky and McCann, and Markstrom doesn't even see it. He puts his glove out as a prediction and almost still makes the save, but he doesn't see it. He doesn't get it. And we score. So more things
And
like this.
Burakovsky, he's not normally a player who likes to go in front of the net, correct?
No, because
And
Burakovsky...
we saw multiple times throughout the last week, he's going to the net. He got a tip in against Utah.
Mhm.
And you see players doing stuff that's just effort. Going in front of the net is just something you don't want to go up there and get banged around, hit by the puck. That's
Yep.
just something that's you're fighting out there with your boys, and we're still seeing that from the Kraken despite continuing to lose games.
It's something that Ty Cartier and Yanni Gourde do quite often and are supposed to do. It's something that Brandon Tanev's supposed to do, but he doesn't do it. And it's something that Jared McCann doesn't need to do, but he does it. I've seen him do it a lot. McCann's supposed to be scoring goals. He's supposed to be playing from the points. He's supposed to be on the left side point where he's got that sweet wrist shot. But unfortunately, I think teams may or may not be scheming to try to prevent that, because him and Maddie kind of have the same shot, and both of them haven't been able to take those shots from the points, which really aggravates me because they have such lethal shots that just don't go, and it's so frustrating. One thing I did want to bring up, which is kind of something that hit me really just before we started this podcast, but also today in watching this game, tonight in watching this game. The Kraken have a obviously so-so goaltending tandem. Philip Grubauer is very hit or miss. He's very inconsistent. He's not always going to give you a good game, and sometimes he'll give you an average game where he'll save a great amount of shots and make some good saves, but he'll also let in an absolute muffin that should not have gone in. One of those happened tonight. One of those happened even against Utah. One of them happened against the Oilers, etc. It goes on. He's almost guaranteed to give up one goal that should have been saved, which is why his GSAX is -8 on the season. Joey is a phenomenal goalie, and I love him. Here's the thing about Joey, and I don't know if this is age. I don't think he's hit his full potential yet. I think he's still going, even though he's like 28, 29 years old, possibly younger. Joey Decord will make every single save you need him to make, but he will not often try to put in double or extra the effort to keep a shot out. And this may seem like a little bit of a like what to some people, because yes, Joey makes some phenomenal saves, but he's really just making those routine saves he needs to be made. I've watched back at a lot of the games this year and looked, and I've watched other goalies. I watched Jacob Markstrom tonight go from being on the full right to dropping to butterfly, making an insane save and giving up a rebound, and then literally flopping his body over and reaching his glove out to stop Ellie Tolvanen from a tip-in shot. Wasn't a huge effort to do that. All he had to do was just flop over and put his glove out. And I saw that, and I sat back in my chair, and I thought, yes, it is Jacob Markstrom. It's not Joey. Like, Joey's not Markstrom yet. But if that was Joey Decord, he would have just sat in his butterfly and looked to his left and watched the puck get shot in. I've seen it happen many times, where he gets bailed out by a teammate who, on a rare occasion, who gets a stick in there to stop the puck or gets a stick lift in. And I've watched Joey just sit and turn around and watch the puck go by and make no effort to save it. And he totally has the opportunity to. He sees the shot come in. I don't know why he's not trying to put in those second efforts. I don't know if it's an injury thing, if it's a mental thing. I don't know. But you don't right now have players that are going to, goalies that are going to keep your team in the game as much as other teams have. And I think that's one problem the Kraken have, because you can say at least in every game that we've played this season that we've lost, especially recently, there's always been at least one. I can't say I've seen a game, even with Joey, where I'm like, it was flawless. Joey played great. Like, that's all on the team. Sometimes it's on the goaltenders too, and for the most part it has been this year. And by no means am I saying that Decord is bad, or it was a mistake to extend him, or he's actually a fake. I think he's going to get bigger and better. But something I just noticed tonight was our goalies don't lay it out all on the line to try to make that last effort save, to try to keep the team in it. Not very often. Joey's move is to just lay on his stomach and do the V formation. And Gru's strategy is to just do the splits and hope that he makes a save. And I'm not making fun of them. I think it's incredible that athletic and they can do that. But it's all they do. And you see it in shootouts too with Joey, which is why Joey's so bad at shootouts. The player comes in, they wait, forehand, backhand, forehand, backhand, forehand, backhand. Quick move, Joey drops to his stomach, they shoot it up. It's his move every single time in the shootouts, is to just drop to his stomach and spread his legs. Or to just fall for the first move. And that for sure is age. That just comes with more playing and more experience in shootouts, which I think the Kraken need to practice more in their practice sessions, is shootouts, which obviously you can't practice for that all the time. It doesn't happen very often, but Joey is not good at shootouts and definitely needs some training there.
Yeah, I'm just like, man, you're down the ball. I just can't get over the fact that the Ducks passed us.
I know. Did they play tonight? I gotta see if they played tonight, because if they did and they won, that means we're good, like...
Not only did they pass us, we have 2 games up on them.
Mm-hmm.
So we are a point behind, and they've played 2 less games. That is awful.
They did not play tonight. They play tomorrow.
No.
They play tomorrow against the Flames, who have kind of fallen off. It's so frustrating because the Kraken are in such a prime position right now. You've got the Ducks are not good. You should be above them. The Sharks are not good. Even though the Sharks, honestly though, of all of the bad teams in the NHL right now, the Sharks are the most fun to watch. Celebrini and Will Smith and calling up Yaroslav Askarov has been so much fun to watch. And they're actually doing really good. They're beating some good teams, including the Lightning. Yesterday, I think, they beat them like 3-2. It was impressive. But you've got the Sharks are bad. The Ducks are bad. The Flames have massively fallen off and are having a lot of struggles, and their goaltending has taken a huge step down after being the best in hockey for the first 2 months of the season. The Canucks are falling apart. Like, falling apart. Internal drama, external drama, fans are mad. They want players like Elias Pettersson traded. JT Miller is rumored to be getting traded. Thatcher Demko can't stay healthy. And they have a minor league goaltender who's playing phenomenal for them in, what's his name? Kevin Lankinen, I think. He's a minor league goaltender. I'm pretty sure. I have to double check my notes. But
And
he
you
got
just
called up last
played
year.
2 competitive games with him as well. You had the
Exactly.
one where you came back. Actually, I'm pretty sure they came back in both games. One of
Yep.
them they ended up getting the win in overtime. One of them
They
ended up
lose in
getting the
shootouts.
loss. But
Yeah.
that's a team that's currently sitting in the last place in the playoffs right now for the Western Conference. And
Yep.
so that you're competing with that type of team, but you're also in games with the Sharks
Yeah,
for no
exactly.
apparent reason. And the thing about I'll say this about Philip Grubauer because it's the same argument that I get with Geno Smith.
Mm-hmm.
People are like, "Why is Geno Smith not a great quarterback?" I'm like, "Well, Geno Smith makes every play you need him to make, but Geno Smith also tries to make all these plays that he doesn't need to make, and he makes bad mistakes. Geno will lead a 2-minute drill, go 5 for 5, 75 yards, and complete it with a perfect pass to the end zone. Toe tap, JSN gets it in. Geno Smith will also look into cover 2 and throw it directly at the middle linebacker, who gets the easiest interception of his career. Like, it's not the fact that they don't have the skill level. Philip Grubauer is slightly different than Geno Smith, but it's the same general idea. It's like you just don't, you can't make the mistake. Just don't make the mistake, and you make some incredible plays, but those incredible plays get canceled out by silly, dumb mistakes. When you let in a tiny dribbler that just got lightly deflected off a player and it just like floats into the net, like there's no need for that to be a goal. You should be saving that shot. Or for Gino, it's like you should not be throwing that interception. And in both cases, those mistakes are really big in games that both teams could have used the points.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Um one thing, by the way, that I've wanted to point out, because a lot of people have asked me about it. Capo Caco, by the way, is playing underrated. I'm going to make up a word here. Underratedly phenomenal. Um, 7 games played, 1 goal, 3 assists, and 4 points with no penalty minutes, and he's averaging just under 20 minutes per game on the ice. He's playing great, and this is something that's kind of a plus to think about. He is what Andre Burakovsky was supposed to be so far. He's he's getting the puck into the zone. He's taking some good shots. He's using his shooting skill to just get pucks on net for players like Ty Cartier, Matty Beniers, Jaden Schwartz. The list goes on. Jordan Eberle, when he comes back, I'm sure is going to thrive with Capo Caco. He's getting pucks into the net. Tonight, Shane Wright scored a goal and immediately pointed to Capo Caco. It wasn't even just the normal point. Like, he emphasized that goal was Capo Caco's, not fault. It was his doing. He made a beautiful pass, saucer pass, right over Markstrom's stick, between another stick as well, right to Shane Wright, who was able to get that puck over Markstrom's glove and in. But he's already making such an impact on the team. And I know we haven't really done that much better since getting him, but he's playing really well and playing exactly what we wanted him to play like, and playing like we wanted players like Oliver Bjorkstrand to play like, which has just made me really, really happy to see. As a lot of people were wondering, is this a bad idea to trade him? Did we trade too much for him, giving Will Borgen and a couple of trade picks? But I think it's been a phenomenal signing, and so far, as much as we've seen, I'd like to see him back next year. What are your thoughts on him before I move on to another
Yeah,
player?
also just like the things that don't show up in the box score. Like if you just watch him play, just look
Mm-hmm.
at how comfortable the people he's playing with feel and how
Yep.
comfortable and confident the amount of confidence Matty Beniers looks like he plays with when he's playing with Capo Caco on the floor is incredible. Like Matty just looks so confident, he looks controlled, and you see the same thing no matter who's on the ice with him. He also had he had one of the most incredible passes I've ever seen against Utah, where he
Mm-hmm.
just completely split the defense. Like I've just been impressed with how because you see what was it 7 games, 1 goal, 3 assists.
Yep.
Like those are very solid numbers, but those aren't great numbers by any means. Like you probably this that's a pretty 4 points in 7 games is pretty solid. Um, but
You do have to remember that, and obviously this isn't really kept as a box score either, but I can say just personally from watching the games, he's he just like the Sounders, he's putting pucks where they need to be, and the Kraken are either whiffing the shots or it's getting saved, or they're just missing the net. And I'm not saying like, oh, he'd be a lot better, and I'm making an excuse for him. It's just true. He probably would have. I would imagine he'd probably have closer to 5, 6, maybe even 7 assists by this point if those shots have gone home. The Kraken seem to have a massive allergy to tipping the puck anywhere but the goalie's chest or punch.
Yeah. And just like when you put the pucks in that sort of position, eventually those will start to go in. And it's just pressure that you're applying on the other team's goalkeeper. Um, I don't know. I've just been really impressed by how he's been playing.
Yeah, he's been playing great. And for people who have a lot of fans that I talk to on my page, who really don't want to trade Gord or Tanev. But like you said, look at the confidence that Matty Beniers is playing with Capo Caco. He looks so much better and so much more comfortable. And I think he misses players like Capo Caco to play with. And I'm not going to sit here and compare Ryan Donato and Daniel Sprong and Morgan Geeky to Capo Caco, but those guys knew how to get a pass to a player and knew how to make a play. And that's why Matty won Rookie of the Year. It's why he's playing better now. Players like Gordon Tanev are not those guys. And I know they don't always play on the same line with Matty, but it affects your team that way too, which is also why I really want Burakovsky off this team. Because I feel like he's almost an infection. He struggles so much to do the simplest things, and it really frustrates me to watch him get minutes on this team. And I'm going to be completely honest, I do kind of wish that Daniel Sprong would get minutes instead of him. Sprong's not that much better, but Sprong at least isn't giving opposing players turnovers in the mid zone of the ice. That's, producing 2-on-1s. He isn't flubbing shot. And that's another thing. Capo Caco's been on lines with Burakovsky, and I cannot tell you the amount of times that he's given Berkey a perfect shot, or pass, and Berkey decides to stick handle, he tries to drag it, he tries to go whatever, forehand back, and then he loses it. And it's like, why are you trying to get all fancy? Just shoot, and even if the goalie gives up a rebound or saves it, at least you A, have the puck in your zone, or B, he's going to give up a rebound, and you're going to have an opportunity to score off of that. Okay, I want to give us enough time to talk about the Seahawks, because a lot happened there, and I also want to talk about some listener questions. So I have a lot more to talk about the Kraken, but I will save it for the next episode. A few things I really quickly want to highlight so we end the Kraken section on a good note. Obviously, some last bit of bad news. Joey Daccord and Yanni Gourde got moved to IR, the injured reserve. Yanni Gourde got moved because of an injury. He cannot be taken off of the IR for 7 days. Joey got moved there just to make open a roster spot till he's ready to get healthy. He already has been out because of an injury for 7 days. Therefore, he can come back whatever time he wants. Excuse me. But having him on the IR opens up a roster spot for other players, which is why you see Ben Myers coming up for Gourde. Maybe somebody else will come up as well. Not Coco, not Jack LaFontaine. They definitely cannot play at the NHL level right now. But that's some good news, is Joey can come back whenever he's healthy, and hopefully he'll be healthy in the next, I would imagine, week or so, since he's just dealing with kind of a chest thing. Let's see. On the up, players that are on the up and up right now, Jaden Schwartz is playing a lot better right now. I sincerely apologize for not having all of the stats up right here. But Jaden Schwartz is playing a lot better. Chandler Stevenson still making a lot of offensive zone mistakes, but he's getting up there in assists now. He's now past Jared McCann, 4 assists on the team with 20. So he leads the team now. And it's actually significantly higher than most players. Bjorkstrand and McCann both have 15. And that's about it. Riker Evans has 14, which another player who's performing phenomenally this season. But Chandler Stevenson's still doing his job getting those assists. What was the last player I was going to... Oh, Josh Mahura, a player who was supposed to be a scratch all year long, who stepped in during Montour having a leave of absence, during Vince Dunn being hurt. Josh Mahura may have only 1 assist and no goals. Defensively, though, he is playing phenomenal. He is positioned well. He is broken up passes. He is laying down hits. He is really trying to use his own kind of gameplay to turn the tide for the team in games too, which is just incredible. So really, really excited to see that this is a player that I was like, oh gosh, if we have to play Josh Mahura, that's not good. And he's totally flipped my opinion there and played a very good game. I haven't seen him made one mistake yet that led up to a goal. So he's playing very good. Last bit of news here. Lots of Kraken players in the World Juniors for hockey, the Hockey World Juniors. Really, the only notable Kraken to really get anywhere is Edward Shale, who his team in the country of Czechia won the bronze medal after losing to USA, in the semifinals. But Edward Shale gets the winning goal in shootouts to win that bronze medal. So that was awesome to see. He completely dominated the tournament. It was one of the top players up there. So that's really good news to hear for us Kraken fans, to see a player like that play so well against the top prospects in the world and in the league. Couple other Kraken players played, but really didn't make it far. Most of them being on Team Canada, as they were eliminated after the first set of matches by Team Czechia and Edward Shale. But yeah, that's about all I've got for the Kraken right now.
Okay, so switching over to the Seahawks, we could spend time talking about what happened in the last few games, but I think it's going to be more productive to just kind of look at, well, first of all, coming out this morning, the Seahawks fired Ryan Grubb this morning, which I think we haven't really talked about this at all, so I'm not sure what your opinion is on this, but I was pretty surprised, if I'm going to be honest. I was not expecting the Seahawks to fire Ryan Grubb because honestly, this might be a hot opinion, but I don't think Ryan Grubb was all that bad. I think he was dealt the absolute wrong cards for the situation and for the scheme that he likes to run. It's no secret Ryan Grubb he plays an air raid. Like, that's his scheme. And when you don't have a line that can protect for passing, you're not going to get anywhere. I think you obviously need to establish more of a run game than the Seahawks did this season, as Ken Walker finished with 3.7 yards per carry and Zach Charbonnet finished with 4.2 yards per carry, both of which not very good. But is how much of that is on Ryan Grubb's ability to scheme up a run game, and how much of that is on the offensive line and not being able to open holes? A 4-yard run was like the effort of a 7-yard run for our running backs this year, because they didn't, like, their point of contact was at the line of scrimmage instead of 3 or 4 yards down the field when they were
If
hitting
not
the
behind the line of
linebackers.
scrimmage sometimes.
Yeah. And so, and I was honestly, there were moments this season where I was pretty impressed with what Ryan Grubb was doing with the passing game. I really liked his extension of the run game with passes, short passes out to Ken Walker and short passes out to JSN. I really, really loved how Ryan Grubb got JSN involved in this offense and turned JSN into a 1,100-yard receiver this year with 100 catches on 137 targets. Like, that's incredible that he was able to do that. I think you probably needed to see a little more scheming for DK and for Tyler Lockett this season, but he did an exceptional job at getting JSN involved in the passing game this year and building on what was already a fantastic rookie campaign from JSN. And so I'm just like, I'm not sure why, because for me, this season was an overwhelming success. You're the first head coach in Seahawks history to get to 10 wins in your first season. You go 7-1 on the road, tied for the franchise record. You do miss the playoffs, but since the playoffs expanded to 7 teams, you're the first team ever to miss the playoffs with 10 wins. So you hit the benchmark of normally what it takes to get into the playoffs. Unfortunately, the NFC was just a little bit better than the AFC this year, so 10 wins didn't quite get you in. You ultimately tied for the division. It took all the way down to some random tiebreaker. I think it was strength of record that ended up, because we had the same record in conference, same record in division, same record overall, split the head-to-head. Like, you were basically equal with the Rams, and yet they have to go out and fire their offensive coordinator. I don't know. It just feels a little interesting to me. I think us as Seattle Seahawks fans, we're so used to Pete Carroll and his running the ball for so long that when we saw something that, like, I'm not making excuses for this run game was awful. Like, I'm not saying the run game was awful, but I think that it was made worse because of what our perception of what a run game should look like was under Pete Carroll, which was so run heavy. And so I'm just like, how much of this is fans just calling for him and like the Seahawks ownership group listening to fans to keep fans happy? Or how much of this, because I started looking into other options today, and honestly, like, not a lot of other options that stand out to me. Like, I I was looking at a list. I'm like, honestly, I'd take Ryan Grubb over most of these guys with a year of development, with a year of learning what coaching in the NFL is like under his belt, with his same players back. Imagine what Ryan Grubb could do with entire offseason to scheme up for JSN and DK Metcalf. Imagine what Ryan Grubb could do with with two more offensive linemen that we get in free agency or via the draft. Like, I'm just not 100% sold on the fact that this offensive struggles. And we didn't have that bad of an offense this year. It was just the run game. The passing attack was actually pretty solid. So I was just a little puzzled by the move when I saw it this morning.
Personally, for me, I was okay with it. I kind of liked it. I think you could argue that yes, Grubb was dealt a bad hand, but I also think you could argue that Grubb's not the right fit for this team. Grubb needs a quarterback that's not Geno Smith. Grubb needs an offensive line. Grubb needs a run game that can kind of work on its own to make your passing game work better. He had the right wide receiver pieces. I don't know. I think yes. I like if they had been like, we're gonna go with Grubb again, I would have been like, okay, that's fine. I don't hate the guy. I think he could do probably a lot more with a full season to scheme. I just feel like I feel like I feel like it was okay to move on. I don't think Mike and Grubb worked particularly that well together. I heard Hawkblogger mention a few things while listening to one of his podcast clips about how Mike and Grubb kind of contradicted each other's play styles sometimes, even though it was offense and defense. Mike's obviously the head coach, and he steps in on the offense too. Priority one, no matter who you get this offseason, is fix that stupid O-line, because that's probably the reason why you're not in the playoffs right now getting ready to play the Vikings, is the stupid O-line. It's got to be one of the biggest reasons. Here's a question that I do have for you. The Rams game, how did you think about the offensive play calling? Like, just in general. Like, how did you like the offense in the Rams game?
I thought it was pretty solid.
Yeah?
And it's just like, here's like, I don't know. I tend to disagree with you. I think that Geno Smith is the perfect quarterback for a Ryan Grubb offense, because what does Ryan Grubb do? He throws the ball a lot. And Geno Smith's a volume quarterback. The more throws that you have, the better Geno Smith gets. And Geno Smith, with 578 attempts this year, he had a 70% completion percentage. That's very solid. Like, that's incredible. Like, not a lot of QBs put up 70% completion percentage. And like Geno, he thrives as he gets more attempts. That, like, he gets in a rhythm, he gets short out, and the short outs, like, those are throws that Geno loves to make and that he's really talented at. I think that if Geno Smith just didn't throw 15 picks this year, that this looks a lot different. I think that Ken Walker's also like a perfect back for the system. He's a good receiving back. He likes getting the ball out of the backfield, making guys miss, just getting the ball in open space. Like, besides the offensive line, I feel like this was a pretty good set of players to play in this scheme. But when you have a bad offensive line, it just impacts everybody so much. Geno Smith was still able to throw for 4,320 yards with a 70% completion percentage, despite getting absolutely killed each game.
But I mean, when you throw over 30 times a game, it's gonna be like that. But also, when you throw over 30 times a game with the offensive line that we have and a quarterback like Geno Smith, he's gonna throw picks. And I mean, you look at the games where he throws over 30 times a game, and there's an interception in all of those games. Basically every game, I think every game that he throws under 30 times are no interceptions, minus the Packers game. He threw 19 times and threw 1 pick. But all of these games, and I get it, with more throws is going to come more risk and more opportunity for everything: passing yards, interceptions, catches, touchdowns, etc. But I just feel like Geno's not a quarterback that I necessarily trust in a system like that. I feel like Geno needs to be your quarterback who can get the job done and doesn't have to really stretch himself out too much to try to make magic happen. And I don't know, at the age and at the kind of quarterback that he is, I just don't see him as the kind of quarterback who fits in that system where he's constantly not only throwing the ball a lot, but throwing for trying to average over 6 yards a throw. And I mean, most of his throws were plus 10, but all these averages are all above 6 yards per average, which is a lot to be asking a quarterback like Geno Smith to be doing.
Yeah, I just I think that we can kind of move this conversation into Geno Smith now, as that's one of the other glaring questions this offseason. And I just I think Geno Smith is a good quarterback, and I always will stand on that opinion. He's a good quarterback, he's not a great quarterback. I think Geno Smith looks better in Seattle than he would in a lot of other systems. I think Geno Smith fits in this current scheme better than Russell Wilson would have fit in this current scheme. Despite how whatever Russell Wilson says, Russell Wilson is best fit in a play action scheme. That's where Russell Wilson succeeds. That's where he'll always succeed. That patented moon ball rolling off. That's what Russell Wilson's good at. It's not sitting in the pocket, a 3-step drop, and getting the ball out. However, that is what Geno Smith is good at. Geno Smith is incredibly good at a 3-step drop and just getting the ball out on time on little out routes. And so, for me, it's going to depend a lot on what the offensive coordinator, the new offensive coordinator that we hire, and what he wants to do with this offense. Because I want a quarterback that ultimately you just need a quarterback that fits your scheme. And for me, it's going to depend on who they go out and get. Geno Smith, he has 1 year left. It's not the end of the world if they bring him back.
I think
He
Mike
is
might
a
have even
little
confirmed.
expensive.
I think Mike might have even confirmed this morning that it's their plan to bring him back. Now, coaches
Yeah,
can
he
say
did
whatever.
not exactly sound enthusiastic about it,
Yeah,
though.
coaches can say whatever they want to the media to get the questions to go away, but he unofficially was like, I mean, I don't see why we wouldn't bring Geno back. But
He's like,
obviously,
yeah,
things
I
can change.
guess.
I feel like the plan is probably to bring Geno back and draft a quarterback to play behind him, maybe. But I don't know who you could get. What's the highest pick that we have to use on a quarterback right now?
If 18,
Is that
that's going to
it?
be our pick.
First round, 18th pick.
Yeah,
Oh
because
shoot, you actually could get somebody from that.
we are
Jackson Dart's the only
perfectly
quarterback I
mid.
really want, though.
We are perfectly mid.
Mm-hmm.
We were so good. We were good enough that we got a decent regular season, but bad enough that we don't get. I mean, good enough that we don't get a good draft pick, and bad enough that we don't get to make the playoffs. It's
Yep,
the worst possible place to be. Although they did find JSN with pick 20, so
this is true,
there's
and a lot of
definitely
other
talent
players
to be
too.
had
You got to remember
in the
stuff
20
too,
spot.
like yeah, and you got to remember stuff too. Like Russell Wilson was picked in the third round too, and look at how incredible he was for so many years. Like Richard Sherman was a fifth round pick. I believe in John Schneider and really most GMs to find talent in other rounds besides the first and second round. It's just a matter of is it going to pan out and will it actually be good talent?
Yeah. So I love Jackson Dart. Anybody that follows my account, you see me reposting a lot of Jackson Dart highlights, and I've been
I do like
advocating
him.
him. I will say he's not a first round talent. That's not someone that I'd be comfortable using the 18th pick with. So if what happens normally in the NFL draft, and this is kind of a bigger NFL football issue, is I okay. I tend to agree with the statement that offensive linemen are overdrafted
Mm-hmm.
and overpaid, but you have to play the game. That's where I actually agree with the statement that John Schneider makes. I would agree with the fact that quarterbacks and offensive linemen are both overpaid and overdrafted.
Mm-hmm.
There was quarterbacks last year that had no business going as high as they did, and yet people are so desperate to try and find a franchise quarterback that they'll way oversell on a player that's not that good. Same thing to find good offensive linemen. quite frankly, there's just not a lot of good offensive linemen left in the college level and in the NFL level. And so teams feel like they have to overpay. But if you want to be good, you have to overpay for an offensive line. Like, if you want good offensive linemen, that's just a game. You can't sit here and say, oh, offensive linemen are overpaid and overdrafted, but you still need them. Like, you can say that, you can believe that, but at the end of the day, you still have to participate in the game that's being played. But for me, Jackson Dart, he's a second. I would be comfortable taking him with our second round pick. But I would not be comfortable using that first pick on him. So if quarterbacks get blitzed and Jackson Dart's the only quarterback left at when we come up to 18, which could happen. I don't know if it's necessarily going to happen this year as much as it did last year, just because of the amount of quarterbacks that were taken last year. And just young quarterbacks that are gonna be available via trade this offseason. Like, you have guys like what's Justin Fields, who's probably gonna be available from the Steelers. You have guys like Zach Wilson, who got a chance with the Jets, but admittedly played awful with the Jets, but he's gonna be back on the market. You have guys like JJ McCarthy, who's sitting as a third string right now on the Vikings. You have guys like there's a bunch of quarterbacks that are going to be available that you could take a flyer on, just like taking a flyer on them in the draft. And so I would be more comfortable with the Seahawks taking a lineman, either offensive or defensive, with that pick, just to try and get like if there's like a chance for a true impact player on defense, specifically a D end, in this draft, and when you come up at pick 18, I think that has to be who you take because we have a lot of good defensive players. Obviously, Leonard Williams in the middle is a star, but if we had like a star outside defensive end, like that could be so impactful for this team because like you have good outside linebackers in Uchenna Nwosu but like Draymond Jones didn't really do much of anything this year.
I
Um,
completely forgot he was on this team.
Yeah, and he's actually making way too much money and is probably someone that you're gonna have to trade or most likely cut this offseason to
Mhm.
try and find money for your offensive line. Because for how much money he's getting paid, let me pull up the stats real quick. Where is he?
Can I
Sort
ask
by.
you a question really quick, actually?
Yeah.
So earlier, I actually had somewhere that I was going with my question if you liked the Rams, the play calling for the Rams game. Um,
Okay.
I haven't confirmed it, and I don't know if it's fully true. It is rumors that I have heard, and I have not found a real source to confirm it other than one link from some smaller reporter. I was heard that Ryan Grubb did not call 100% of the plays against the Rams. One of our passing coaches who used to do offensive schemes for the Rams apparently helped call a lot of the play calls for this game, and he's apparently a potential candidate to just move straight up inside and take Grubb's
Okay.
spot. I will look at what his name is and try to find him and try to see if that's true while you're finishing your thought. But that was just a thought I
Also,
wanted to finish and put out there.
to specify about Draymond Jones, um, 4 sacks this season and every game 17 games played. So
Oof.
only 28 tackles, only 14 solo tackles, 4 sacks. He did have 7 tackles for loss, which put him third on the team, so that's pretty solid. But you need better numbers out of someone that you gave 3 years, $55 million to. Um, but yeah, speaking of Leonard Williams, real quick, absolutely snubbed. He'll
Oh,
still get in.
absolutely snubbed.
He'll still get in as an alternate, but he had no business being an alternate because he should probably be an all-pro.
Some of the
And so
comparisons of who made
also
it.
real quick, just
Yeah,
like
go.
congrats to Spoon on getting his second Pro Bowl selection. Um, JSN, some people will say he was robbed. However, if you kind of go through and look at, it was much closer than people like give it at face value. Like each of the other three guys that got selected for the NFC had incredible seasons. It was much closer. The Leonard Williams one, it wasn't even relatively close. Like he is one of the leaders in almost every statistic for interior defensive linemen, not just in the NFC but in the whole league. And the fact that they didn't give him a spot is just disrespectful.
Yeah, some of the comparisons to people being like, look who got in instead of Leonard Williams, and I was like, there are like tens of whatever the number is of like difference between Williams and whoever else got in. I'm like blown away that he didn't get in compared to who else did. But at least he's probably going to get in as an alternate, or will get in as an alternate at least. And congrats to Witherspoon for getting recognized. I feel like he kind of went a little bit under the radar this year, but it's good to see him get recognized by the league. But yeah,
Yeah, he really had a great closeout to the season as well.
He
He
did.
played fantastic, like in the second half of the season after starting a bit slow.
Both him and Leonard Williams really closed out the year really well.
Yeah, which is even more surprising why Leonard Williams didn't get the nod for the Pro Bowl, because usually they has a lot of recency bias. Like, come on, man, Jalen Carter. I just it's so much of who you play for.
Yeah. Good lord, we have so many coaches. I'm just trying to find who it was. Okay. Instead of me searching for this for a while, maybe this is something that I'll bring up another time. We've got probably just a few minutes left. I have some listener questions that I want
Yeah, let's do
answered.
those.
We were a little bit light on the questions this week, but it's okay. We kind of been gone for a little while, kind of caught people by surprise. Okay, I got this first question here. 3 most likely quarterback candidates to draft, or to draft to play, or to sit behind Geno in his final year. I'm gonna let you take this one because I literally only want and really know of Jackson Dart.
I'd say Jackson Dart is one. That's who I hope. Obviously Sam Howell. The Seahawks didn't just trade for Sam Howell to become a backup. Like, they could have found a better, cheaper backup. Like, he is still a guy that I think the organization believes in. And so he's going to be there, competing with whoever else they bring in. You also could go trade for JJ McCarthy off the Vikings, depending on what they decide to do with their quarterback situation, as they currently have Daniel Jones, Sam Darnold, and JJ McCarthy. And somehow, if I named that quarterback room to you at the beginning of the season of Daniel Jones, Sam Darnold, and JJ McCarthy, you'd say max that team probably has like 8 or 9 wins if they played out of their mind, and yet somehow they had 14 wins. But for me, it's either going to be JJ McCarthy. I would love for the Seahawks to trade for Justin Fields, because I think Justin Fields is an incredible player who never got a fair chance in Chicago. Like, that is where quarterbacks go to die. They're in the Jets. Like, and he came into Pittsburgh this year and he didn't lose a game, and then he still got benched and just has proceeded to watch Russell Wilson lose the division to the Ravens. And they ultimately still made the playoffs, but under Justin Fields, they were undefeated. I've always been a Justin Fields fan. Like, I think he's a great player with a lot of the skills that you need to be a good quarterback in the NFL. But I don't think he's someone that's going to be available to come sit on your bench for a year. I think wherever Justin Fields goes next year is going to be somewhere where he can come in and compete to start immediately. And I don't know if the Seahawks are going to have that opportunity. Like you said, Mike McDonald did say that Geno's going to come back. Maybe they bring someone in like a Justin Fields and they compete with Geno for the starting spot. But I say more than likely it's either going to be one of the really young quarterbacks like a JJ McCarthy, or someone in the draft like Jackson Dart.
Yeah. I don't love Justin Fields, but I would like to see him on a good team. And I feel like you might have seen him on a better team in the Steelers, I don't think he played well at all. I don't know. I wouldn't. It wouldn't be the end of the world for me if it was like, oh, the Seahawks traded for Justin Fields and he potentially could be our starter. I'm not going to be like, no, he's terrible, he sucks. He legitimately hasn't really gotten a good chance. But also, I watched him on a Steelers team with a good O-line, better than the Seahawks, and a really strong defense to start out the season, and good, at least good wide receivers, and good coaching, and couldn't put up more than 13 to 16 points a game. But again, I would not be. It would not be the end if we went and got him.
And there's like a whole bunch of other guys that kind of fall into the same category as Fields, like where if you want a quarterback competition, there's a whole nother tier of guys, so like the Sam Darnold tier that are very similar to Geno Smith. That like, who knows what's gonna happen with someone like Kirk Cousins next year, as he got benched for Michael Penix. Like, is Kirk Cousins gonna be someone that's available? Or someone like Derek Carr, who got hurt slash benched, and they're playing Desmond Ritter now with the Saints are playing Ritter. I don't know what's going on down there, but like someone like around that skill level, if you wanted to have a QB competition, you most likely could. But I don't think that's something that the Seahawks are really interested in. I think they're more interested in seeing Geno through his last year and then turning to whatever option they choose to go with a young quarterback after that.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do maybe. I think I only have 2 more questions here. The next question, we kind of already answered this one, but it's kind of an extension to it. Is this season a success for the Seahawks or a failure? And what's the bar for next season?
It's 100% a success. Anybody else that says anything else, expectations are set at the beginning of the season. I'm a firm believer in this. Expectations are set at the beginning of the season, not the end. They don't change in the middle of the season. There's people that have gone to full-fledged arguments about where they said, oh, BYU is a failure of a season because they didn't make the college football playoff. I was like, no. BYU won 11 games after being projected to win 4.
And
In what world is that a failure?
Too.
Yeah. And so this team was first, all brand new coaching staff, a talented roster, but a defense that was awful last year, an offense that was okay, an offensive line that was awful last year. And they came in and they won 10 games again. And they had a better record than last season. How can you call it a failure of a season when you took essentially the same roster and won more games with it? Like, people are like, oh, but after you start 3-0, not making the playoffs is a failure. I'm like, no. Like, I just disagree with that. I think that winning 10, having the best winning percentage of a Seahawks head coach in the history of the franchise, how can you call that season a failure?
Yeah, you can't call it a failure either, because nationally, we were projected 4 wins. Personally, if you were a Debbie Downer, you were probably looking at average fans saying like 7, 8 wins. And that just being because people didn't know what Grubb was going to be like. People didn't know how Mike was going to do as a head coach. And people didn't know what the defense was going to look like. And so I feel like most Seahawks fans were saying around 7 to 8 wins. So a 10-win season where you also should have gotten into the playoffs is incredible. I think it's a massive success. The bar for next season right now, I think the lowest that you could put it is making the playoffs, I think.
After this year, be a playoff team next year.
After this year where you almost made it, next year has to be a year where the bar is to make the playoffs. Like, you're going to make the playoffs. You need to. The highest you can put it is winning a playoff game, because we haven't done that in a while. So,
yeah,
like, the high bar is to just win a playoff game. The low bar is to just make the playoffs in general.
And let's also not forget, Geno Smith beat the 49ers for the first time in his career this year.
Yep.
The Seahawks broke a losing streak against the 49ers on the road. I'd say, honestly, this season was a failure for the fans. Like, this team, I was just not impressed at any point this year by the Seahawks fans. I feel like we let down the team, both in like critiques.
I mean, talk about losing home field advantage this season. Like I somewhat partially blame fans for some of the home losses. There were some
I
loud
agree.
opposing fans there. And I have a lot of people who went to the game, including my own parents, who were like, there were a lot of Seahawks fans there, even it sounded like there were a lot of opposing fans. And I'm like, but why was it so loud? Like that Packers game, they scored that first touchdown, and the Go Pack Go cheers were louder than most of the Seahawks cheers that I heard throughout the entire game. And it was devastating to just be watching my TV, and I'm like, yep, that's our stadium. You can hear more Packers fans than you can hear Seahawks fans.
And it's not even about the quality, it's not even about the quantity of fans, even though that is important. It's just about the passion that the fans have. Like, this place isn't roaring like it used to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the fans that are there aren't as loud, they're not as into it. People are using the season tickets just to sell for money.
Yep.
Like, that's not what Seahawks football is about. Um and so this season was an overwhelming success, but I think that us as fans need to do better in supporting our team. Um, and the fact that we're even having this conversation, I think, even shows a little bit of that. That some fans have the audacity to call this season a failure. Like, this season was not a failure. And if, like, you can't expect your team to be competing for the Super Bowl every single year. Like, the expectation of having a new coach is not to make the playoffs. Like, the expectation with a new coach is a learning curve. A learning curve has to be expected by fans. And we had one of the smallest learning curves, I think, of any new head coach that I've seen in recent memories. So,
Yep.
yeah, overwhelming success.
Yep, I agree. Last question, which is going to be a little bit of a fun one because the last one that we answered for this week was already answered, asking about Geno Smith and next season. So this one's going to end just with a fun question. Three of your favorite sports-themed TV shows or movies.
Well, as a stats major and someone that wants to work in baseball, Moneyball is one of my
Moneyball!
favorite movies. I actually paid to watch it on the flight down
Yep.
to Seattle for Christmas break, and it was fantastic as always. Um, let's see what else. I really like Hard Knocks. I
Mm-hmm.
think that Hard Knocks is a really cool idea. For those of you that have Netflix, I started watching Starting Five over the break. It's basically the same idea as Hard Knocks, except it's following five NBA players throughout the season. So it's following LeBron James, DeMontis Sabonis, Anthony Edwards, Jimmy Butler, and Jason Tatum. So that's kind of like a cool idea for a show too, just to, like, see what it's like to be inside the NBA the same way that, like, people love Hard Knocks, because it's like, what's it like inside the NFL? Um, so I like that as well. And then one of my favorite shows slash documentaries of all time, I thought The Last Dance, um, the documentary about the Bulls and Michael Jordan, was just fantastic. So yeah, that's about it.
I think for me, I've watched a lot of. I feel like honorable mention has to be Moneyball for me. I love it. It's not actually, maybe it is in my top three. Okay, I'm gonna put that at three. Moneyball's got to be in my top three there. I have already mentioned it a few times. I watched Shoresy for the first time last year and absolutely loved it. It's a hockey. It's like an adult hockey show. It's really fun. I tried Letterkenny, which is basically the main show. This is kind of a sequel to Letterkenny. Didn't really like it that much. Wasn't really my thing or my humor or anything. Remember the Titans has always been a favorite of mine.
Yeah.
Childhood favorite movie of mine. I love Denzel Washington. That's such a great movie. I think those will probably be my three. I still need to watch a few more. I haven't watched The Kid in a while, but that's a good one. I'm trying to remember. I've watched a lot of one of oh, Friday Night Lights is very good. That's a good football TV show.
Yeah.
If you want like if you want a good like older sports TV show, Friday Night Lights is a really good watch. I love that show. Alrighty. Anything else from you?
No.
Alrighty, guys. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. It has been great to be back. We're super excited. I'm gonna start trying to release on a weekly basis now. As you're back at your dorm in college now, I think, and I'm
Yeah.
all my family has left, and friends have left from being here for the holidays. So I now have all my space back and a lot of my time back too. So Thank you guys so much for listening and watching wherever it is that you're listening and watching. Keep an eye out in the next few weeks for some live reactions from Seattle sports season and I, especially for post-game stuff, especially for the Kraken coming up. I feel like I've already repeated myself a few times, but again, guys, thank you so much for watching and listening, and we will catch you in the next one.